Hello, and welcome back to the Young, Wild, and Rich podcast. I'm your host, Dayne Camella. If you're listening to this episode, this is a continuation part 2 in my interview with Hunter Gregg. If you didn't listen to part 1, which is episode number 92, the episode before this, please go back. That's all about Hunter's experience joining the military. And if you're listening to this today, it is November 11th, and I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and honor all the military veterans who have served in the United States Armed Forces. We would not be such a great country without you, so thank you. In this episode, we are going to continue in Hunter's story after getting out of the military and what kind of came next for him, the battles that he had to face mentally, and just some of the things that affect lots of different people after getting out of the military. It's a great conversation. We go into some tips, some tactics, things that Hunter wants to focus on in his career while he's in school, things he's studying. It's a great second half of my conversation with Hunter, so I'm extremely excited for you to listen to this, especially if you enjoyed part 1. I definitely think you're going to really enjoy part 2. So let's dive in to part 2 with Hunter Gregg. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and I look forward to hearing what you guys think. Cheers. If you look at the average person who goes through something like that, like, hey, this is a huge physical challenge that any normal person might not be able to get through. But dude, just hearing about all of your experiences in the military up until now, and the conversations that we've had, it's been such a journey for you of like physical and mental challenge and a lot of pain, that you're someone through the other conversations that we've had who can take experiences and learn from them, even if they are like extremely difficult. And again, it's like your mind is so much more powerful than your physical body. That's the thing that's carried you through all these experiences. And to you, it was probably, hey, I've been through so much. Like, I okay, that's what you think is going to happen, but no, if I can walk right now, I'm going to get back to running. I'm going to get back to all these things.
No, and I really appreciate you saying that. And what I'll say is, like, if I were to think of, the different experiences and what allowed me to get through it, I would say it was a mixture of a couple things, and one of them, is having people around you, like, that then basically, like, even prior to selection, I talked to a guy when I was prepping, a guy that with his Green Beret, and I asked him if he had any advice, and I feel like this relates then to life, to business, to where he said, look, I could tell you're a very intense guy, which I am, and so it's kind of like you need the intense guy, in the team, but then you also need the funny guy. Mm-hmm. You need the jokester, you need, in that case, it was something that was physical. So you need the freakishly amazing athlete guy, or maybe if you're in another sector to where there's always those people, what I mean, that are just very, very good. And so you need that mixture of that group, because at different times you're going to lean on each other in different ways. And, I was blessed, like I had, my buddy Luke Nettie, he's now over at Syracuse, Stephen Norling, I had Josh Burney, who's, doing great. He has North Star Realty Investments that he's working with. And, I had these people along the way, John Gay, Justin Reten, all these people, Just Jackson, of course. So to where basically in that time to where you're in that low, you need to then have those people that then to be able to lean on, and that could lean on you, and also then yourself, of then being able to then say in your mind, like, damn it, you know what I mean? I don't know what I need to do to get from A to B or to Z, but I'm going to do whatever it takes, just like, and once you just kind of make that decision, you're just like, whatever I need to do, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And a lot of the time, things start kind of falling into place. Like, I know we had talked about Viktor Frankl, mm-hmm. Man's Search for Meaning. Highly recommend that book if anyone listening hasn't read that. And he created something, and it was called logotherapy. And basically, to sum it up, is and he was, by the way, he was a psychiatrist that went through Dachau and Auschwitz. And so, this guy went through some stuff, obviously, way worse, than me, and, the thing is what he figured out for himself and the other people that he saw that made it, was basically that then they found meaning in their suffering. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to find meaning. It's kind of like, it's kind of like, I'm sure you've probably heard this, and I've heard this a lot with business people, of, the people that are just trying to, let's say, make the most they can, with money, as far as like an hourly wage. You're like, oh yeah, it's just about that. Like that may take you a little bit, but like that's not going to take you, to Elon Musk. You know what I mean? That's,
Right.
It's like, or exercise. Well, I just want to lose 5 pounds. Well, yeah, you might, but then you're probably going to end up gaining 10 more, later on, because it's your reason why isn't big enough.
Right.
Like you have to create that very serious why and be honest with yourself about it, and then do it. It's like,
I should say, like, because I think some people have difficulty, like, with the, like, meaning is a big word. It kind of falls in that same thing with like purpose and passion. But like you had just said towards the end of your statement there is like, okay, let's dwindle it down to like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the purpose? Because then if you keep asking those questions, like, well, why am I doing this? And then you answer that, and then you ask yourself, well, why am I doing it for that reason? And you keep asking yourself that. That's where you can get down to having a deeper understanding of what gets you up in the morning. Like, why are you here? What is the the long-term goal with this type of thing? I think that is so important.
No, I agree. And honestly, a lot of the time, not that this is the only reason, but a lot of the time your why has to do with other people.
Yep.
Like, like for me, different things that I went through in the military, and usually when I was cold, I keep going back to the cold weather, but it'd be like, there's those moments where you're like, what am I doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? You're just looking around and you're like, what am I doing? And then you start going back, to that why, to like, it's different, different times, call for different things. It may be like, well, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to give up. I don't want to create that habit, you know what I mean, of giving up, or so-and-so next to me, I need to do it for, especially once you're a leader, because I ended up becoming, I had my own sniper team, I was an NCO, as a non-commissioned officer, sergeant. And when you have, people under you, they look to you. And so it's like a lot of the time it's, you may be freaked out, you may be tired, but guess what? Like if you crumble under the pressure, then what about them?
Yeah.
Like what are they going to do? Like, and so you just can't, you need to figure out a way, and it's worth it, but I will say, now to bring it to the next step of, when I got out of the military, and by the way, my recovery, it took a long time. I may have knew the first time I could stand that I was going to be okay, but I mean, it was a journey, like a couple years, really. I mean, to where yesterday I actually squatted 500 pounds. And so, like obviously I've gotten it back, but it took a while, a lot of setbacks, but whenever I got in the military, it was something to where, and I feel like a lot of athletes go through this, to where definitely a lot of guys when they get out, to where, that's your identity. And so now, you're in a place to where it's kind of like, are you going to just rest, maybe some of the athletes to where they'll just be like, well, yeah, I played, here and, or I was all state, I was this and that, and then for the rest of their life, that's all they talk about, and that's always their identity, and sometimes with the military that happens as well. I decided I didn't want that to be me, like I wanted to, I'm proud of what I did. And I'm so proud of the guys that are still, in the fight, even in this day. And, one of which also, by the way, you said people going back, he had actually gotten dropped in the Q course, a buddy of mine that I was there, and I can't say his name for security reasons, but he knows who I'm talking about. And, now he ended up going back after, being stationed in 2 different places, and he went back, and now he's literally about to get his Green Beret, and I'll be, as long as the schedule permits, I'll be there to then when he gets his Green Beret, when he dons his Green Beret. Like, he didn't give up. Like, yeah. he did it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, but so I will say though, when I went out, then going through that issue, well, then, you know, it was something to where I was, you know, it wasn't just military stuff, you know, but it was, you know, in the military, everything, every day, you know, is a journey. Everything is pass or fail. It's very intensive. You know, you're constantly, you know, moving towards the next rank, the next school, the next deployment, you know, whatever it is, you're just moving forward. Well, when I got out, it was something where now I have this free time. And, you know, now, and I'm still recovering from my injury, and, you know, now you have a lot of time to think. And I'm reflecting on, you know, some messed up things, you know, in the military. I'm reflecting on, you know, messed up things even from childhood, you know, and it's something to where there's a time to be on the warpath, and sometimes the warpath takes you to a point where now you need to, as cheesy as this may sound, but, you know, now you need to heal. Like, now you need to confront, you know, maybe some of those demons, because a lot of those people, you know, I'll say, you know, there's been far greater men that have gone through far worse things than me, you know, and a lot of great men. But I'll say, you know, I've probably checked enough of those, you know, man card boxes, you know, along my path, you know, for me to then tell you, like, look, if there's someone out there, you know, that is hearing this, and maybe they're going through whatever it is, you know, mental health issues, whatever that may be on any spectrum, go get help. Like, go get help. You know, and for me, you know, I went to therapy, and, you know, that was a journey within itself. But I'll say, you know, a lot of people, they think that it's the weak thing to do, especially a lot of guys, you know, and it's actually the courageous thing to do. Like, go get help. I mean, because unfortunately, you know, like when I left the military, you know, it was one of my old soldiers that was taken from me because I was injured. Obviously, I can't do, you know, sniper stuff if I can't walk, you know. And, you know, my last moment when I left, you know, base was I saw First Sergeant Hall, the one that had taken care of me through, you know, all the stuff, was the best leader. And I went to say goodbye to him. And he didn't tell me, you know, what he was doing, but he said, come meet me over at the All-American Chapel. When I was there, I see all of my buddies that I deployed with. I see him, you know, and one of my former soldiers, you know, Trey Tweet, who was a great, you know, a great guy, like, and had his own battles he's going through, you know, had killed himself. And, you know, that was the saying about everyone, you know, that was it. And, you know, and there's been more since then. And it's pretty common, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people in the combat arms. So it's like, don't, you know, if you have something you need to get help with, then go get help.
Right. And I mean, I think, you know, even back to that meaning thing and finding a why, the military is a great place for that, because you're working towards something way outside of yourself. You know, you're not only, you know, in a position to defend and protect your country, but you're also in a position to put others in front of yourself. Like, everyone in the military is a leader in some respect. You know, you're battling for your brothers and the people that you're going to deploy with, and there's so much meaning that comes from that. And you do create an identity, just like some people do when they play football and then they get out of it. I've had conversations with people who have played football, and, you know, you kind of lose yourself after it. And then, you know, similar to what you were talking about, and how mental health is such a big issue for so many people in this country, but especially too for, you know, people who, you know, enter the military. You don't really have, like you said, that time to think. You're always running, you're always doing things, your body's being pushed, your mind's being pushed, you're hurting, it's so much chaos, it's craziness, you're run, go, and then you get out. Now you have this time to think and reflect and kind of deal with some of this stuff, like you said, that you have to go through. And you can either, you know, sit there and try and do it all yourself and try to be a bigger person about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come to some conclusion or get past it. So, you know, being able to go talk to someone, being able to get into a group, like, that stuff is always going to be there if you never decide to work through it. And, you know, that's something that you did. Like, yes, it's great to be, you know, someone who can push through any physical challenge. And again, you've been through so many that, you know, I'm so appreciative that you shared on this podcast. But that's one side of it. But what about the, you know, the mental side? Like, your mind is so powerful, and it can work to help you, but it can also work against you too. And so many people, you know, struggle with that. I mean, even today with social media and all these things, even young kids right now are growing up with, problems and, suicide and all of these things, face so many people. So, being able to like drop your ego and say, hey, I'm going through some stuff. Like, you need people around you to talk to. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that. My brother's had friends too, close friends that, he went to school with that seemed fine on the outside, when they would hang out and stuff. And then, you hear that one of my brother's friends, and this was, I think, like a year or two ago, just my brother saw him maybe a week before, but he killed himself. And my brother had no idea. And it's like, no one knows unless you're able to feel comfortable with yourself to admit that you have something going on. And that's not a sense of inferiority or weakness. It's, hey, we all go through, everyone you meet in your life is going through some internal battle you have no idea about. So being that person to come and, have a conversation, to let someone know that you're there for them if they ever need to talk, like, those things go so far, but yet we still feel that admitting something like that puts us in a position of weakness, or, it's a stigma thing in our society still. And, even having a conversation with you like we did 2 weeks ago, we talked about a lot of stuff that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily talk about, from people who haven't even had a conversation in years, like you and me. But when we talked, it's so good to have those conversations. It's so good to have those conversations. So yes, like you were saying, Hunter, if you're someone out there and you're listening to this and you're going through a personal battle, lean on those people that you love most. Like, reach out to people that, you can have this conversation with, even if they don't have the same, situation, or they can't relate, they still can relate because they go through things too.
Right. Exactly. Because I feel like for some of the people, they might not be able to, give you some deep wisdom, truth, but, maybe just saying it, you know what I mean? Just saying it out loud. I mean, like that might be, enough, depending on whatever then the person is going through. And like, something that I've used, through different stages is, for one, and I kind of already alluded to it, whenever, I'm in that kind of, like, let's say if you're going through something, now you're in Iraq. Well, guess what? That's not the time. It's like, I'm not saying, like at every single moment, you know what I mean, that you could just, hug it out, kind of thing. It's like, there's a time for war, too, in life. But then there's that time too, to where, like, look, to remember that, okay, whatever hard thing you're going through, first off, it's not going to go away. It's not like you just ignore it and then everything's cool, and you forget about it. And the other thing is that whenever you confront it, what ends up happening, and this is one of the meanings that then I pull from a lot of the things, is that now it made me so much stronger. It was like, like I learned so much, like from those things, from confronting it.
Right.
You learn about yourself, you learn, through learning about yourself, you learn about others as well. I mean, and, being able to, like you'd said, of not just the people, if you have an issue, to reach out and, ask for help, but those other people, remembering the fact that, like, hey, sometimes people need some help, and like realize, and I'm guilty of it too, just like everyone else, but like realize sometimes people are going through some stuff. And just because, you don't know everything that's going on in their life, so sometimes just maybe be able to ask, like, and I've done this, and, even one of my buddies, like, he told me, like, later after the fact that he was going to kill himself that day, and he didn't do it. He's doing great now, but he was just saying, like, hey, are you doing all right? Yeah, I'm doing this. No, man. Like, are you actually doing okay?
Right.
Like, and it worked out. I mean, it's definitely, unfortunately you're right. It is something that is stigmatized, and because it's like you break an arm, you can see the broken arm, and you get a cast and it's done, but something mental, I mean, like, you can't necessarily see it. And so, like, it's unfortunate. I mean, yeah, that actually brings me kind of my next step then in the path of then, now I'm a student. I'm over at Texas A&M University, and I'm double majoring in psychology and philosophy to then one day become a psychologist, to be able to, help out not just, my buddies, the vets, out there, but everyone else too, to be able to go into that, dark, swampy water, hold their hand, and bring them into the water and, help them out, and it's something that I wanted to do prior to even the military. It's just something in my mind. And, so I look forward to that. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, so why are you getting a philosophy, degree, like on top of that? And so as far as I'm a big time, I know we've discussed it, I know you're the same way. I'm a big time research guy. And, one of the things is if you're about to then take on something difficult, one of the ways that I get over, some of the stress related to it is I learn about it. And the more I learn about it, then it makes it easier, to be able to handle. So when I was doing research of then how to be able to, get into, these PhD programs and, all this graduate school, I found out that then philosophy, I kept seeing across the board, philosophy was either the number one entrance into whether it be like law school or even top 3 for med school, business school, like all these different schools. And so I thought, man, there must be something like to that. And did more research, spoke to some people, and another side note on it, I love philosophy also. And so like it's also something I just learned in my free time. So like might as well get some credit hours for it. And what it is basically it's with philosophy, with anything, it's the ultimate ivory tower, thing is philosophy. And it's because basically what you're doing, it's like you're going to the core, of like all these different subjects. And so the more that you learn about, like, let's say Aristotle, then you're going to be able to then understand, the natural sciences better.
I think it's after like talking to you about it, like when we did have that conversation, it makes a lot of sense. And I love how through all of your experiences, they've all been compounding, even since back to football, then to the military, to being in a leadership position, to going through all the ups and downs that you've done. And then, dealing with the mental side too, and getting through that. And, even just, me, myself too, like having, everyone goes through different mental issues, but even us being able to like talk for an hour and 30 minutes, like having someone to talk to about stuff, right? You're not looking... Like sometimes, like you said too, you just need someone to talk to, and it's not like you're looking for the answer. You're just being able to get things off your chest. Like that feels so good. Even for myself, being able to have that conversation with you, 2 weeks back, that felt so good to have that kind of conversation. And I think one thing that can come from this podcast and what we're talking about in this podcast too is at least bringing more awareness to other people out there, men and women, to feel more comfortable to say, hey, it's totally okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to feel like something's not right in your mind, and you want to explore that, because it all starts with becoming aware of something that you might not have even like wanted to bring up because it's a deeper, darker issue, and you don't necessarily feel comfortable going to talk to a doctor about it, like the stigma and things. But being able to have a conversation with a friend similar to what we did, like that's what I would love for people going through things to come to at least one takeaway from this podcast is to say like, hey, it's okay that you have something going on that's not easy to understand because it's not physical. It's inside your mind. And yeah, we grow up in this society where it's like, no, mind over matter. You can get through it. Just get over it. It's like we know now that is not the solution, just to get over it. It's a deeper thing. So being able to have these conversations, and now you pointing that in a career where not only you can help vets, but you can be someone where people can come talk to and feel like they're in a comfortable place where that person is going to not only try to help direct them on a path, but also, be empathetic to their situation. Like that's so powerful.
No, it definitely, I mean, it's something to where for me, as far as the path is concerned, it's something to where, like, it's kind of like the military. I've even had this conversation with my wife and a few other people in her program. For me, it's something to where you're living life in a very extreme way. Mm-hmm. And those are all different facets, like of life, especially in the helping professions or the military, which you're helping, you know what I mean? But it's also war. It's like a very different, kind of help, but it's something to where it is, or even someone just in their own personal journey to where it's like, don't you want to, like go deep, like, don't you want to just get into it? Like, even like if you're going through something, hard, well, you may need to figure this out, or else, you may look back, 30, 40 years down the road and, I don't know, maybe just be angry all the time. You know what I mean? And just, like no one wants to be around you. And it's like, because again, it doesn't go away, or if maybe you're not even necessarily going through something, but it's important just to have that self-reflection, because you're going to learn a lot about yourself. I mean, because one of the things with psychology, it's our conscious mind is only a small portion of who we actually are, which I feel like a lot of people throw around the term subconscious, but they're not like really think about what that is. It's like you're not just whatever you're currently thinking about is not the entirety of your being. So like keeping that in mind, that then maybe, by going deep and kind of like, I feel like with some of the stuff you're doing with this podcast of like, figuring out like, what do you like? Mm-hmm. Like what are you able to live with, in your life, like, and then figuring that out. And then what ends up happening is now your why is bigger, for one. It's also just very practical, and, you're happier. It's like, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. Like one of my favorite quotes is, the quality of your life, or the direction of your life is so much correlated to what type of questions you ask yourself. And the better questions you can ask yourself, the deeper questions you can ask yourself, similar to this podcast and what you said. It's like, what do you like? What would you love to be able to do? How do you think you could do that? Not, we all ask ourselves horrible questions from time to time, depending on if like we're in a bad state or anything. It's like, why does my life suck? Why do I have this job? Like those don't get you anywhere. And it's like being big enough to look at yourself and be able to ask yourself these questions, be able to sit around with other people who support you, and to get feedback and not feel like that's a step back. Yeah, it could feel like a step back, but it's the whole idea of like taking one step back to take 3 steps forward. And it takes time. It takes, reflection. And maybe I'd love to ask you too, for even, let's say, someone who's listening to this who might be a vet, or who might be someone who is going through some really difficult emotional stuff, because again, you've gone through this yourself. This is obviously a constant journey. It's not like we're always working through, like, new stuff is always going to come up in your life. But I'd love to ask you, just dealing with all the things you've dealt with, I have my little tools and things that have helped me, but I'd love to know from, being someone who's been in the military, being someone who's dealt with really difficult things, what are some things that you do to deal with, the mental stress of life, or just going through challenging things? Are there some things that you do to help you get through that from, your experience up to this point?
Oh yeah, definitely. I actually was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine that's in right now, that's going through some really, really intense training. And there's a few things. I mean, so like, for one is, basically, and I think I mentioned a little before, of like making the decision that you're going to do this, and whatever that means, you know what I mean? Like you burn the bridge, behind you. Like you say, I'm going to do it. Then the next step would then be, because that helps a lot. I mean, like, because then you're not using your mental energy, thinking of a million different excuses, to then get out of it. It's like, no, man, you've already decided you're doing this.
Yep.
So, keep going. Another is then, if you have time prior, is definitely the visualization, and not just visualizing the positive things, but also even the negative things that then may occur, because then when it happens, again, less mental energy. You're going to be able to then get through it. Another, definitely research, anything you could find out if you're moving into, maybe you're starting a business, maybe you're training for a marathon, whatever. Well, it's like, we'll just use the marathon as an easy example. Well, guess what, man? Like, definitely you need to decide you're going to do it. Maybe that's signing up, The next is, okay, well, it's not like you just go out and run some random distance all the time, every single day. It's like, now you need to start planning, okay, well, I need to start stretching. I need to, work up to this mileage, because that's another thing I saw in some of the training with some of the people, specifically in SFAS, to where like I would see them and let's say they're on a run and they're running with their eyes closed. What it is because they're trying to get injured. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's like, that's just another excuse, you know what I mean, that they're giving themselves. So like, figure out those things, what are those things that then could save you time, in the moment. Another is, let's say if you're in a period and you're in very, very, and this is physical or mental, because they're kind of built in with one another, to where, let's say you're in the heat of battle per se, you're in the shit, everything around you seems to be sucking, like take a second, take a deep breath, you know what I mean? Realize, that's again where if you have someone around you on your team, the funny guy kind of comes in, or just to yourself. Sometimes like in the military, this would happen to where everything would suck so bad that we would just start laughing because it was like ridiculous how horrible this is. It'd be like, man, this can't get any worse. And then it would start snowing or something. And you're just like, oh my God. Like, and then your ruck breaks and now you have to, it's like, sometimes you just need to laugh. Like, and just be like, all right, this is ridiculous, but all right, we'll get through it, And then, I would say one other one is I would say to separate these two. So like, if you're going through something that's like purely mental, like no physical, then at that point, being able to then realize the fact that then your mind, you know what I mean, cannot be like you're going to have to take breaks. Like, it's kind of like the people that say, well, I'm going to study for 8 hours straight. Well, are you really studying for 8 hours? You know what I mean? Like, honestly, no. Like, you're probably checking your phone and doing these things. And so it's like, realize that and then plan accordingly. If you're going through something physical, there's definitely, some of that. But I mean, most of the time physically you could go way further than you actually think you can. And so if you're in something extremely physically demanding, then realize that then, for me, like I remember when I was in the land nav, or a lot of other things, even almost everything actually, like even with football, I'll say, like I read Deion Sanders, it was Money, Sex, and Power, his autobiography. And one of the things he talked about was when he created Primetime, Primetime Deion Sanders, he created an alter ego. And sometimes that alter ego is someone, that literally exists, like maybe, I love David Goggins, maybe it is, David Goggins, and you're imagining what would David Goggins do? You know what I mean, in this situation? Then you do that. Or maybe then you create, like for me, in the military, everyone calls you by your last name. So then, and I know Goggins did this, but I actually didn't find him until after the military. But whenever people would call me Greg, I would think of, I'd think of my grandfather. I'd think of my dad. I would think about the lineage of the men that came before me, the warriors, and I created an alter ego. And it was like I had to, because it is you. Like that alter ego is you.
Yeah.
But it's something to where you're tricking your conscious mind. It's just a trick to get past it, to then be able to allow you to become, that person that you can become.
Dude, I love that. It's funny because in, I don't know if you've read the book Relentless, but it's by like the guy who trained Kobe Bryant. And he talked about that alter ego too. Like, Kobe Bryant, the Black Mamba. And, I've done that for myself too. And it's like, it is you, like you said. It's just like the best version of you performing, doing, and being at your best. Like if you had no struggles at that moment in time, you were on top of the world, like creating that alter ego and then identifying with it. Like I've done the same thing for myself too. It might be stupid to other people, but to me, it actually makes it makes sense to me. It's like, I look at myself, it's like, my name's Dayne. So in my mind, it's like, I have this alter ego that's like, great Dayne. What's Dayne at his absolute best? And like identifying with that. And then some of the other things you said, which I think I just identify with so much, is like, you first, you need to make a decision, right? Because like any decision we make that decision then and there. Like whenever someone's going through something and they decide like, you know what, I'm done. No more is this going to happen. They've literally decided and made that commitment now to get through it, like you said. And then the other part, which I really, really have been thinking about a lot these last couple of years, is looking at both sides of every experience. Every experience you have has the pros and has the cons. So like you said, when you were going to do something, or like you make a decision like, I'm going to do this, it's like, great, visualize like the good stuff that's going to happen, but also don't be blinded to the negatives that are going to come with that decision to pursue this thing. You have to be able to see it from both sides, because if you're just polarized to the upsides of things, it's like whenever someone starts something like, oh, I'm going to go start this business, or I want to start this project, I want to start a podcast, this and this and this, like these are all the reasons why it's going to be so good. But if you never think about the challenges that are going to come, once that challenge comes, like you're going to be like, what the dude, I didn't expect this. This isn't fair. You know what I mean? Like, dude, that's such good advice. Like, it kind of sounds simple on the surface, but the simple things are sometimes the most difficult things for people to even do from the get-go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I'll add one more thing that just came to my mind when you were saying that, was I also don't want people to then think that, let's say, using the term, and I know you said Jocko says it, but it's so, like, getting on the warpath.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Like, celebrate little victories. Don't like, oh, this is the end. But like, you need to then celebrate those little victories, because that's using your emotions in a positive way. So it doesn't turn into you just essentially creating like, it's like Guy Montaigne talks about this, like being a friend with yourself. Like you don't want to, you're not just trying to make yourself a slave, but a good friend's also going to tell that friend, like, hey man, like you're being a wuss. You know what I mean? Or like, yeah, like it really is. I feel like it's totally part of it. Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's like sometimes the easiest things are not so easy for people to do, but it all starts with you asking yourself those questions. And too, like to all the other things you said too, if you're going through something, or you're trying to figure out these things, come back to asking yourself, why am I doing this in the first place? What are the reasons driving this behavior? Is this something I should be doing? You can always course correct and change. We're all going to always go down, go through ups and downs, and we're going to think our life is going one way, and then, something happens and takes us in a completely different direction. I think you still have to be open to leaning into your journey changing over time, because I think that's a big thing that a lot of young people face too today, is like, oh my gosh, I got to go to college. What am I going to major in? Do I have to do this? It's like, dude, I majored in exercise, wellness, health promotion. I did it for 8 years, and now I'm doing something completely different. But I leaned into it. I didn't say, oh, my life is over. I thought I was going to be this. And so many people get boxed into that as young kids. Like, oh, you need to be a doctor. You need to be a lawyer. You need to be this. You don't need to be anything. You need to just lean into creating a ton of experiences for yourself, especially if, going back to what we were saying, like trying to find meaning, trying to find purpose. Like you can find meaning in pretty much anything you're doing, but be open to, continuing to learn. I know you and me are both like that. We're voracious learners. We're always trying to grow, because we don't know what, the future holds 10 or 20 years from now, but we want to be as prepared as possible to be able to take on any opportunity that comes whenever it does come. And that only starts from being someone who's open to, taking on the challenges of being a human being, which is order and chaos, like Jordan Peterson talks about, right? It's going to be like a lot of good stuff, but also just as much bad stuff out there. And that's totally fine. That's how we grow as humans. That's how we grow as people. Because what would be a life if you just knew everything that was going to happen and nothing in your life was challenging? That would be the most boring life ever. So. Yep.
No, you're totally right. And I would say like something that when you were talking about it there, like as far as like learning and, or even with exercise or different things, it's like also, quit maybe, making everything a negative, like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like, I feel like some people, I know, like, with our discussion of as far as like reading and different things, to where it's like there's legitimate enjoyment, you know what I mean, that you could get from that, and you're doing something that's, wonderful for you, and you have no idea how then it'll necessarily help. Like, also then with exercise the same way. It's like, maybe let's like take a step back and be like, am I thinking that, let's say, working out is bad because other people told me that it's bad? What do I actually think?
Right.
And a lot of the time, a lot of those things, they fall into place, and you're like, before you know it, you're looking at it and you're like, man, like right now I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all these books, piled up, and it's like, wow, like you've been through, a lot of just amazing minds, been able to experience that, and it was enjoyable. Like,
Right.
like it, and there's definitely times, like especially in the beginning when you start something new, there's a learning curve that it's like, a lot of people, especially any young people, but honestly anyone, but I'll just say for me, especially when I was younger, I was guilty of this, of like, let's say if you're trying to then, be able to hold your breath, and then you start watching videos on, David Blaine, holding his breath for 10 minutes, and you hold yours for 30 seconds, and you think, oh, I'm done, and you give up. It's like, well, no. Like, for one, kind of like you said, as far as, how things can change, maybe it's not even, maybe you think it's about, like, for me, I'll say, like, football. I thought that it was about football, but in the scheme of things, I learned so much from that, that experience, that then a lot of the time, it's not even about football. It's not about whatever, holding your breath. It's not about that thing sometimes. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the time it's on a deeper level. You're learning, how to, let's say, be disciplined. You're learning, like when you watch the David Blaines out there, you don't think, oh man, I'm not David Blaine. You think, oh man, what can I learn from this guy so that I could be the best me?
Yes. 100%. Dude, it's like the same thing. Like, you and I love reading. I used to not like reading. I used to not like reading at all. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't like reading. Okay, that's, again, pointing out the negative. Why don't you just like make a commitment to yourself to read 2 pages a day, and just do that for like 50 days? And then you know what's going to happen? You're going to start enjoying the process of reading, because you're learning something every single day. It's like, just be the best reader that you are, or the best beginner reader, even at like that simple level. Just like starting real simple, and then just like letting it grow from there. Not everything is going to, be something that you absolutely love. But if you can just create as many new, like net new experiences, from reading to, skills, like developing different skills. I mean, that's the world we live in. Like, your value in our marketplace is going to be, directly proportionate to the skills that you have and the things that you learn along the way. But you don't have to, again, comparison is the death of joy, is like one of my favorite quotes. We live in a society where everyone compares themselves to other people, and they look at people who are already like 10 or 20 years ahead of them and say, just like you said with the David Blaine thing, do you know how much like practice this guy's had? He's had his whole life doing this. Of course he's going to be able to breathe way longer than you, but where do you need to start? Being the best version of yourself, and literally just day by day, like small steps, like get a little bit better, get 1% better every day. What happens in 365 days? You're a beast compared to where you were the 365 days prior to that. I think people like just either overcomplicate it or make the process of even starting so challenging, because again, it's like the more complex you make anything, the more difficult it's going to be to ever start something. So if you just like take it just to day one, it's like hearing about you getting in the military, day one, like, okay, this is what it is. But then it just continued to get more challenging and rigorous, but you were developing, you were getting better every single day. And now you can look back and be like, dang, if I could go through those experiences, I can get through anything. It's that muscle that's just continued to be refined like over time.
Exactly. You're totally, yes, exactly. And, whenever you're starting on something, like let's say the reading thing, well, maybe you're reading shitty books. Maybe, you know what I mean? How about you actually read something, especially in the very beginning? There will come a point, you know what I mean, to where you probably do need to read that, textbook, type of, material. But it's like, maybe start off with some fiction, start off with something easier, like, because be honest with yourself, of like, okay, making that decision, this is going to be, something that I do now. This is going to be me, well, I'm going to start in this way because guess what? I know I'm going to then, this is just going to be a part of my life. So now I'm going to, I'll read Harry Potter or whatever, you know what I mean? Like some fiction and just start reading something like that. And then you'll be like, okay, well now I really want to know about coding, or I really want to know. And then you move into, other things, and that muscle, like you said, is already built. Like, and for me, like I'll say, prior to the military, when I ran that, quarter mile and stopped, thought I was going to die. Yeah. It was, during that whole train up, it started off to where I would walk and then I would jog and then walk. And
right.
Then, and it got to the point where it got so crazy. Like I was literally, going outside at, 3 not that I recommend this, but I was going outside at 3 a.m. I'd be like butt naked, you know what I mean? Just like out there, and it'd be like snowing. You know what I mean? I'd just go stand out there and just see how long I could do it. You know what I mean? Just like, so that whenever, and eventually it's not about that exact moment. It was later on down the path when now it is very much sink or swim, and, you want to break, you want to give up. But then in the back of my mind, it was like, I remember those little things that I did to where I was like, no, man, like you're tough. Like you could handle this. Like, and all of a sudden, you get through it and then you're done. And then you look back and you're like, wow, like how I'm so happy, that I took that first step. Like, because it's always about just taking that first step.
Dude, 100%. I mean, even back to the reading thing, like, how about instead of saying, I want to start reading, say, I want to become a reader. Like, you identify with, I actually am a reader. And again, it's like, great, pick a book, like you said, that you can at least enjoy doing, and you do it long enough, now you've become that thing. Or like, I want to run 3 miles. Well, why don't you just become a runner and just start? Or like start by walking. Like this little step, dude, the little steps are everything. And again, we're hitting on this point, but it's like we're trying to share things that help people get started. It's all about getting started. So many people never start, but if you can start from a very simple place, that grows. Everything you start and continue to do grows into something. It's just like building a new habit, right? It happens over time of doing the same thing to where your body wants it. Your body wants to, get up at that same time every day because you've started getting up at that same time every day. We are habitual creatures. Like everything we do is habitual and has patterns. And I know you're big on like pattern recognition, and everything you learn in psychology is about pattern recognition. You can look at it. It's everywhere, from business to the tech world we live in, to relationships, to how anything starts. There's patterns, and there's a blueprint to do anything. And you just need to like figure out what that blueprint is for yourself, and then just start. And then from there, you get a little bit better. You hit roadblocks and, different challenges along the way. But ultimately, as long as you keep going and you keep getting a little bit better, you will eventually get there. Like I 100% agree with that.
No, exactly. And I want to point out, like, with anyone that's listening, what we're talking about, we're not saying that all of a sudden now, you're 5'2" and you could be LeBron James. You know what I mean? It's like there is, some like common sense associated with it, but in most things, the vast majority of things, like a lot of the time, you're just, kind of like that David Blaine metaphor. It's like a lot of the time you're not, it's like you're not understanding, like the fact that it's like, or even Steve Jobs, he said, what is it? The moment that you realize that no one is smarter than you are, you know what I mean? That's created all these things around you. That was when then he figured it out. It's something where a lot of the time it's like you can outwork, a lot of those flaws. Like, and that's something, with me that's helped me on everything that I've ever done. Because it's like a lot of the time what ends up happening is your pain tolerance higher. Like if your pain tolerance is higher, and you just keep pushing, then you end up surpassing most people.
Yeah.
And every time that you do it, then you get like energy, like from it. Like like David Goggins talked about, like taking souls, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of, you know, like, yes, you know, like you could move another step forward, and it's even better when you're moving towards something that's helping people.
Right.
Like, that you could feel good about, you know?
100%. I mean, dude, even like the most successful people, let's say in like business or technology, like you see these billionaires and millionaires, and let's like even taking like physical out of it, like a lot of these guys might not be in the best shape, but what a lot of them have in common is the ability to handle and manage a ton of stress and pressure. Like these guys are at the top of their game. Like you look at an Elon Musk, is he going to go run like a 10K? Probably not. Is he in the best shape? Probably not. But do you know how much pressure and stress and like challenge this guy can handle mentally? Like he is so strong in that area, and that is such an important area to be working on. But it all starts one step at a time. You know, you don't have to compare yourself to, you know, billionaires, but these guys can handle pressure and stress for a reason. It's constant challenge, and challenge comes in so many different ways, but you can work around all of that. You can get better physically, mentally, spiritually, you know, in your relationships by just confronting that stuff and dealing with that stuff. I mean, Goggins is a great person to look at, who's just, I mean, dude, his story, and I know your guys' stories are different, but it's such, you guys have such similar stories in pain tolerance. But physical pain, I think, really translates over to like mental pain too, because physical pain, you just feel it so much, you know, it's physical, it's there, but mental, it's different. It's something like, you know, it's like self-debilitating, it's your thoughts and things like that. But like those two things, like, dude, it's just stuff that we all need to work on in our own, you know, respect to where we are in our journeys. But I mean, just getting started and doing that one day at a time, like you'll be so far ahead.
No, I completely agree. And, you know, as far as the physical with the mental, the beautiful part about the physical stuff to help you with the mental is that then you could do it quickly. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, and so if you want to learn about yourself, you know, be able to find yourself and be able to start building the confidence, you know, to move into other areas. It's like with physically, it's like go step out your door and go start sprinting, you know, and just see how far you can make it, you know, sprinting, and how many times that you want to tell yourself to give up, you know, and you keep going. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, then whenever you're like for me, I've always struggled like with math, you know, it's where like, it's like how many times I looked at it over and over and over, and it was like, oh my God. And then you know, take a second, you take a step back, and then you go back and you're like, but it was from that same mentality from the physical stuff that then I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to do this, and I'm just going to keep doing it until I figure out the way to do it. And then sure enough, then you're able to do it. You know, it's like, but doing those, like the exercise stuff then helps you to build energy, because a lot of the things, like the big things out in the world, it's a longer time frame. You know, and so it's like, it is very much, you know, an endurance race, you know, in some ways. And so then it's like, by then being able to do those things to continue strengthening yourself along that endurance race, then you're going to then be able to basically continue down that path and get like enough like return on your investment, you know, and that's why then, like you had said about the, like, well, I'm, you know, you are a reader. I'm a reader. You know what I mean? That's a part of our identity now.
Right.
So the reason why we did that, you know, I'll say for me, the reason why I did it originally was then I figured out, okay, for one, I'm not very good at math, but I realized I could read really quickly. And I learned how to do that. I actually took time to learn how to speed read, you know, and then at that point I realized every person that I look up to reads. So I'm like, you know, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, maybe I should start doing that, you know, like, and it's helped me on so many different levels. I mean, it's helped me.
Dude, in what you were saying too about the physical, I mean, that's where everything started for me. After I got out of high school and, you know, I got big, I was like 190, but I was like not happy with how I looked. I didn't know anything about nutrition and fitness. I just made a decision that day and I was like, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And I obsessed over it and I did it for years and I got in the best shape of my life. And once I went through that experience, because I just became obsessed, and I was just like, I want to change my body. I made that decision that day, and just every single day was reading, learning, like learning as much as I could, testing, trying so many different things. And then coming out of that experience and doing that and changing my body, I was like, if I can do this, I can do anything. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, for anyone listening, like starting from the physical component of like, okay, let's say you don't want to read, but like you're not happy with your body and you're like, oh, I want to start working out. Why don't you just say, I work out. I am someone who works out. That's a part of my identity. Like that's a great place to start, where I think it's a little bit easier to control the outcome that you're going for, because it's all an internal game. It's all an internal game with yourself. It's getting up every day. It's, developing some eating habits and some workout routines and like you see progress fast. You see progress in weeks and months and then years of doing it. And then that physical, like you said, it translates over to the mental side so well. So for me, that's where everything started, was physical. And that just carried over into then becoming like obsessed with reading and doing all these other things to like, okay, how do I strengthen my mind now? How do I develop these new skills? How do I become, this other side of me that I want to do, where I carry that into my career and these other things? But it all started with just changing my body and my eating habits. And that's why I got into health and fitness. And I mean, that's probably a huge part of it for you too. I mean, dude, military, all the training, all the other stuff. And now like you're in this world of psychology and research, and it's just a completely different element, but that's still tied to everything you do on the physical side. Like you're still keeping yourself in top shape. Dude, you went through all that stuff and you squatted 500 pounds the other day. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. No, thanks. Gosh. I mean, it was, yeah. And the reason why is, I mean, I decided I was going to figure out a way to do it, and eventually then you do then build up, like I would say, this is a trick that then, this is actually backed also, like psychologically, it's psychologically sound, basically, that then, basically, if you want to then go into a specific area, like one of the things to do is then find, and that's the beautiful part about, our day and age, go find, let's say if you want to be a, I don't know, we'll say like use with my wife, like be a nurse. Well, go on all those nursing pages. There's a million joke nursing pages. There's a million like, helping, like how to get a nursing school, how to, like all those things. Start at, follow some of those accounts. Start going on YouTube, you know what I mean? Start looking up some stuff and then immerse yourself in it, and then what ends up happening is then you're able the next time to where now you're going on this journey and then you speak to then someone, now you know the lingo, because honestly that's like half the battle with a lot of things is right. Like to get rid of the imposter syndrome, just know the lingo. I mean, like, and then from there, then it's like before you know it, then you really are, like in the beginning you may be faking it, you know what I mean, until you make it, but then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I made it. It's like, it really is so much like that.
That's where everyone starts. Everyone starts at zero. No one just starts at like, I'm this. Everyone starts with, I have nothing. I need to develop all these things. I need to get better. So like, yes, like everyone that is in the position that you want to be in, they started in the exact same position as you. Yes, some people get help from money and other things and, mentors or just like opportunities, but we all start pretty much from the same place. So
no, I completely agree. And I'll say, like with me, like with the psychology, and like all those different, like at the stress that comes with different parts of the field, especially coming from something like the military, to where then what I did is I decided, like, one, I was going to do it, but then also two, that then I was like, maybe I need to, start watching some academic lectures from MIT, from Harvard. Maybe I need to, I remember this thing that I saw that, let's say, Jordan Peterson said, and it was about this specific guy. I'm going to, maybe I'll start with a YouTube video, get the general idea of this person. Then maybe I'm going to read their book. Then maybe I'm going to read the entire collective works. And then all of a sudden now, then where then the, some aspects of the military with some of the people then may have been a, especially the inevitable question of they find out you're in the military. Oh, what do you do? Well, I was a sniper. Well, people react in very different ways. Like sometimes they're like, shield the children, you know what I mean? Get away from me, you're crazy. Sometimes they're like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like kind of like in a strange, childish way, or in a legitimately just nice way,
Right.
Or they're just completely indifferent. Well, when you go into something like with psychology, to where then they're immediately like, because it is so, like very academic, that then, there may be some level of judgment. Well, then if I only can talk about the military, well, then of course there's going to be. But then if I could talk about the fact that, I've, almost finished the entire collective works for Carl Jung, well, now there's respect.
Yep.
Like, and so I don't know. It's yeah.
So Hunter, I have 2 more questions to ask you, and then we'll conclude. I'm so glad though we got to talk, because I wanted to spend a good amount of time talking about your story. I think it's so great to hear, especially for people who are curious about, joining the military. What's the experience like? Is there ups and downs? And from this episode, there's tons of ups and downs, but just to see where you've come and where you're at now, and I know you look at it this way, as like, it's been such a learning experience, and you've grown so strong, and it's like you got this intestinal fortitude that I can do anything, and you're going to continue to keep pursuing that. So I appreciate you sharing just like some of the insights and some of the stories and some of the challenges about your experience. One question I ask on this podcast to everyone who has gone to college is, would they recommend college? But I want to change it up a little bit and ask you, because you're in college now, but you also went to the military, and there might be people listening into this and saying, hey, if I was sitting down with Hunter and I was picking his brain, trying to get some advice, and the military is one of those options that I was thinking about, what would you share to that person who's asking you, hey, do you think I should join the military? I know it's a tough question to answer, because everyone is in a different experience, but what would you share with someone, just even at like a high level, who was thinking about it?
Kind of at a bird's eye view with it, I would say, well, for one, the combat arms is a very small part of the military. Mm-hmm. Like the majority of the military is not, like my experience, So I would say you don't have to join the military if you want to then, deploy, engage, and destroy the enemy. You know what I mean? That's not the only reason. If you were to join, I would say it was one of the best things that I ever did in my life. And obviously I'm out, and I don't want to be back in, but it was something to where I learned so much. So I would recommend it, for someone to do it, but especially if they're trying to get some specific job training through it. But if you're wanting to go the route that I went, then really make sure in your mind, you know what I mean, that this is, as much as you can, realize the fact that it's not a game. You know what I mean? Like this is very serious. This isn't Call of Duty. You know what I mean? This isn't, like freaking watching Gladiator. Like this is real life, and this is your life, and potentially your safety, and you need to be willing to do it for yourself, and also, which will end up happening unless you're a horrible person, to be willing to give your life for someone else, because it is very much a team event. It really is. And so just really think about those things, before you join, and if you still feel strong about it, then do it. I enjoyed it. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's great advice. And again, you need to, really ask yourself why you want to do it. And, there's a lot of meaning that comes from it too. And being able to serve at a higher level, not just yourself, but those around you, and protect and, serve our country, etc. So no, I think that's great advice. The last question I'm going to ask you, and then I'll ask, you where people can maybe reach out and connect if they have any questions around your experience, or just want someone to, reach out to, is I ask everyone on this podcast in some way, just because everyone who comes on has a very similar mindset. Everyone's, in this type of growth mindset. They're working to do a lot of things. They're high achievers, they're high performers, and all the different careers I've had on. And, during your life, you have different reasons, motivations to do stuff. But today, what today, and it's a very open-ended question, maybe not the best, I always say too, just to preface it. You can think about it for a second if you want, but like, what today drives you to continue to just keep pushing and growing, and, trying to add as much value as you can to helping people and, pursuing what you're pursuing today?
Yeah, let me think just for a sec.
Sure.
Okay, so I would say it's a multi-layered kind of answer. So for one, my wife. The fact that, when you're married, like, if you respect marriage, it's something to where you need to basically, like, if you fail, well, it's not just you. You know what I mean? Like, there's another person. And so, a little bit of that, also the joy of whenever then, achieving something great, that then it brings me personally, as far as, like, the kind of, like, again, that, like, friendship with yourself of, like, like, strengthens almost that, like, friendship. But also then when you achieve great things, the people that you care about get to enjoy them too. Like, they get to be proud of that too. And so, like, it's not just a you thing. It's like, you go for big goals so that you can enjoy, but also the people in your inner circle, on your team, the ones that have been through the hard things with you, like, they get to enjoy that. And then lastly, specifically about then with the psychology thing, is that then there's, for me at least, there's nothing that I could think of right now, at least, that is more sacred than being able to go to someone in their lowest point, like, mentally, to be able to go there and then be able to either just listen or to be able to then, tell them this, one or two things that then is able to pull them from it, from that dark place, and remind them, like, that's not, they're not destined to live life like that. And, like, I've had a lot of those moments prior to the military, in the military, now that I've been out, to where, like, when those moments happen, it's like, it's like a, like, religious experience. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe it. And so for me, the idea to be able to go to school, become a subject matter expert, and then be able to go into those dark places with them, and be able to then, like, give them help. Like, man, like, that's a way to live, like, oh, that's a big why.
Yeah. No, I love that, and that's very similar for me too. That's one of my biggest drivers. I know everyone's drives are multi-layered and multifaceted. One of my biggest drives too is to help other people in any way that I can, to learn something and pass it on to another. There's nothing better than, like, sitting down with someone that you are close with, or someone that you're just meeting for the first time, being able to have a dialogue and share something that you learned, and that person to, it's like when you learn something and you apply it, and you see how it affects your life, there's nothing better than seeing someone else do that for themselves. And I have no doubt that you're going to be able to do that at such a big level with what you're doing right now. So I appreciate you sharing some of those things. I know it's personal to all of us, but everyone has a different reason, and it's always interesting to hear, what other people are thinking about, especially at this time in our lives where we're continuing, we're still in our 20s and things like that, but we're progressing, we're moving forward. So that's awesome. Last thing I'm going to ask you, if someone did want to reach out to you, maybe they had a question around anything you shared, or maybe, they wanted to reach out to you because maybe they're struggling with something similar that we discussed today. I know people can always reach out to me on social media and stuff like that, but what would be the best way if you're comfortable sharing any form of communication? Typically people share like an Instagram or like an email, but whatever you're comfortable with, I'll let you, share that here now to anyone who wants to reach out and connect to you.
Sure, no, definitely. And yeah, if there is anyone out there, like, I can't, well, if they want to just talk about something in general, or if you're going through some hard time, I can't guarantee you that I'm going to be able to help you, but I'll definitely try. And so, my Instagram probably be the best way to reach me, would be FH Gregg, which is GREGG. And so then, yeah, if you reach out to me, through there, that'd probably be the most speedy response. But also my email, Francis H. Gregg, again, Gregg, at gmail.com.
Awesome. Guys, please do reach out. Like, every guest that's come on here has been open to, willing to connect or share some advice from their experience from the different types of careers we've had on. So please do reach out. And again, I appreciate you, willing to be able to have a conversation with someone. You never know how you can impact someone's life, not only from, listening to this podcast, but being able to have, a conversation offline as well too. So Hunter, I just wanted to say, man, thank you so much for coming on today. I mean, in my mind, you're a hero. I know you said you're not, but like, a hero is someone who, displays courage, has achievements, has noble qualities. You have all of those, and just hearing your experience has been amazing. And also, man, thank you for your service as well, too.
Thanks for having me on, Dayne. I really appreciate it. And just thank you for your kind words and being able to be willing to hear me out and have you on your podcast.
And that is going to conclude this 2-part interview series with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to reach out to him, guys, please don't hesitate to reach out to. I've known him for a long period of time. He's a wealth of knowledge from what he's doing now in school. And he's just a great guy who might be able to point you in the right direction, whether that's joining the military or helping you as you get out of the military. Again, I wanted to say thank you to all our veterans out there. If you're listening to this on November 11th, it is Veteran Day. Thank you so much for your service. And thank you so much to any of you who are listening to this, who are enlisted right now, or who are like Hunter, who have currently got out. Your service means so much to people like me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you ever want to connect with us, info@youngwildandrich. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. And I hope to see you in the next episode to come. Cheers.